Hey guys, Josh here, and September was a pretty big month in terms of farming games, with so many games releasing close to each other, and honestly, it was a bit overwhelming if you tried to play everything, as well as of course pretty expensive. I originally had the intention to make in-depth individual reviews for all of these games, but since they're all games that require at least 30 to 40 hours to complete, I realized that it's not realistic for one person to do. But what I can do is go over all of the games that I played this month. Most of them are farming games, but there are a few different ones as well. And I'll tell you for each game how long I've played it, what I liked and disliked about it, and hopefully this should help you decide what game to pick up next or what game to avoid. The first game is Rune Factory 3 Special, which released on September 5th for Nintendo Switch and Steam. I played this game for about 10 hours, and if you're not familiar with the Rune Factory series, it started as a spin-off of the Story of Seasons series when it was known under the name Harvest Moon, and it includes everything you would expect from a farming sim, such as farming, relationships, festivals, fishing, and all of that, but it takes place in a fantasy setting, has a bigger emphasis on the story, and it also has dungeons, combats, skills, and other RPG elements. Rune Factory 3 Special is a remaster of Rune Factory 3, which originally released for the Nintendo DS, and if you've played Rune Factory 4 Special, it feels very similar to that game. The controls, the gameplay, and art style are mostly the same, but the story is different. In Rune Factory 3, you can transform into a golden woolly, which if you're not familiar with the Rune Factory series, it's kind of a sheep monster, and your goal is to reconcile the humans and the monster people that no longer get along with each other. This game is a bit more challenging than Rune Factory 4 or 5. You will have to grind a bit and make sure you have the proper equipment before going into the next area, where as in Rune Factory 5 for example, you could breeze through most of the game with whatever equipment you could find. This means that there's a bit more grinding, as I said, and a bit more challenge, so just keep that in mind. Other things to keep in mind is that this is a remaster of an older game, and it doesn't have all of the quality of life features of more modern games. So for example, if you put something in your shipping box by accident, you won't be able to get it back. You can also only play as a male character, and there is a good selection of bachelorettes to choose from, 11 of them, each with their very own distinct personality, but there is no option for same-sex marriage. If you like Rune Factory, you'll be feeling familiar with this game, you'll know what you're getting into, and for the most part, it feels like a Rune Factory 4 Special, with a bit less features and a different story. So if you're looking for somewhere to start with the Rune Factory series, maybe you could start with Rune Factory 4 since it has a little bit more content. Next we have Fae Farm, which released on September 8th for Nintendo Switch and Steam. I played this game for 40 hours, which makes it the game I played the most in September. But this doesn't mean it's a perfect game. I do have a video with my first impressions of Fae Farm, which I do recommend you watch if you're undecided about that game. And everything I said is still true, even after playing a lot more. I'll summarize very quickly, but what I like the most about Fae Farm are the controls, the movement, and the graphics. So running around, jumping, and swimming is just so pleasant for some reason in this game, and it's really easy to go from one place to the next no matter which way you take. The game feels very smooth and cozy. There is combat, but except for one specific type of enemy, it is pretty simple, and above all of this, Fae Farm is so addictive. This game manages to make you always want to play one more day, you're always progressing towards something, you always have something to look forward to, and it makes it really hard to stop playing. However, the relationships in this game are not great, the dialogues are very repetitive and not that interesting, and most characters feel lifeless. Even after marriage, your spouse will just walk around your farm and will not do anything. There are also no real festivals, just some seasonal shops, so I wouldn't recommend Fae Farm if you like farming games for their social aspect. I also want to talk about the multiplayer a little bit, since that is one thing I didn't get to talk about in my first impressions video. So how it works is that once you finish the first chapter playing by yourself, you will be able to host your friends in your world, and once they join you, they will have to create a new character, kind of like how it works in Stardew Valley or Roots of Pacha. This means that they won't be able to bring their character and progress from their own save file. They will have a dedicated character just for your world. So for this reason, I think that if you plan to play with the same friends and progress with them most of the time, you will be fine. But if you just want to play with different people, maybe just once in a while, it might be annoying having to have them catch up on your progress every time. Overall though, I really enjoyed Fae Farm. It's a game that is extremely addictive. It just feels great to play, it's relaxing, but don't go into it for the relationships or festivals. Next we have Sprout Valley, which also released on September 8th for Nintendo Switch and Steam. I played this game between 5 to 10 hours, and I do have a video where I go over a few days in game and show you what it looks like, so feel free to check that out if you want to know more. But Sprout Valley is a pretty simple game, and that can be both a good and a bad thing. You play as Mineko, this cute little cat who moves to an island, and you can choose between a few different island layouts, and there you will be doing some farming, fishing, a bit of decorating, and you'll pick up some fruits. You can also go to random islands where you'll pick up more fruits and other resources. After a while, I started wondering if there was a bit more to the game, but eventually, if you do keep going, you will get access to your basement, where you will have to provide materials in order to repair a giant seed machine. This will give you a bit more direction, and as you progress, you will unlock things like pets and hats, but overall, this game remains very simple. I would recommend getting it if it's on sale. It's currently 72% off, bringing it down to $5, but that sale might already actually be over at the time of uploading this video. It's a nice game to pick up if you want something cute and simple that you can play for a few minutes, or if you need a break between two more complex games. But if you're looking for complexity, this one will not be for you. Next we have Sugar Shack, which released on September 14th for Steam. I played this one for 3 hours, and it's not a lot, but it's only because I've been so busy with other games, and I really hope I can get back to Sugar Shack a bit more in the next months. If you don't know what a Sugar Shack is, you usually find those in Eastern Canada, and that's where they harvest the maple sap to make maple syrup. And you can also go inside where there's kind of like a restaurant, and you can eat a bunch of food and sweets with maple syrup. So in the game Sugar Shack, you make maple syrup, grow crops, and then serve food in the shack. It feels similar to Overcooked or Lemon Cake if you're familiar with those games. It's maybe not as stressful as Overcooked though, and one thing that I like is that you can rearrange the kitchen. So for example, if you sell a lot of apple juice, you can make sure to keep your apples close to your juice press, and things like that to optimize your workflow. You can also play with friends. I've not tried that yet, but I will say when I played, I did wish I wasn't by myself because there were really a lot of things to do and manage all at the same time, both inside and outside of the shack, and I feel like it would have been easier to do everything with some friends. This game has a lot of reference to Quebec culture and folklore, which obviously appeals to me because that's where I'm from, and if you don't know much about it, you'll probably miss out a lot of fun little details, but I think you'll still get to enjoy the gameplay. One thing that I dislike is that it took me some time to get used to the controls. For example, most of the actions in this game are done with the left click or the right click, and I kept pressing the wrong one. So for example, I would be throwing an item instead of just dropping it, or I would be taking something from a chest instead of putting it in the chest, and things like that. Some things can also feel a bit clunky or not as polished as most other games I played this month, but it's such a unique game. It takes place in a setting we don't see very often. It's very charming and the core mechanics are fun, so I'll definitely go back to it and would love to do a full review on it in the future. But when I do get back to it, I think I would like to play with friends. I also want to give a quick shout out to Sunrise Order, which also released on September 14th for Steam, but this one is in early access and I only played the demo a few months ago, so I don't have too much to say about it right now. It reminded me a bit of Sprout Valley, because you're on this island and you're mostly by yourself, so everything you'll order will be delivered to you and there's no proper town to visit. When I played the demo, I felt like it had some good ideas, but it still felt a bit rough or clunky in a lot of areas. As I said, it's still in early access, but I wanted to mention it in case you're interested or if you have any thoughts to share about this game. Now let's jump to September 20th with the release of Moonstone Island on Steam. This will be also released for the Switch in the future, but there's no date for that yet. I played this game for about 20 hours. I do have a beginner's tips and tricks video as well as a few live streams if you want to check that out. But it's basically a mix of farming sim with Pokemon with a little touch of old school Zelda. It takes place in a procedurally generated world filled with over 100 islands, and you go around collecting spirits, which are these creatures with very unique designs. The combat system is card-based. Each spirit will have their own cards and elemental attributes, and I find that there's a bit more strategy than in Pokemon, and I'm usually not a fan of the battles in Pokemon games, but I do love them in Moonstone Island. As you explore, you will stumble upon temples and dungeons, which are pretty simple but will reward you with unique items and rewards. The farming is also pretty simple. The crops are useful because they are used to heal your spirits and also allow you to tame new ones. But you will unlock sprinklers very early on, so you can go for days and days without having to worry too much about watering them. You also have a barn for spirits, and if you feed them, they will give you some items. But once again, the mechanics are very simple. I would recommend this game if you're looking mostly for a monster taming game and you enjoy some turn-based combat. The farming is a fun little plus, but it is not the main focus. The only negative I would say about Moonstone Island is that right now there is a bug in my save file that prevents me from talking to one of the NPCs, Magic Man, but the team already released a few patches, so I'm hopeful this will be fixed soon. Our next date is September 26th, and there is way too much going on that date. First, there's the beta for Critter Cove that launched on Steam. You can actually join it for free if you want to playtest the game. It's not a proper release, but I still wanted to mention it since I played it for about 5 hours. This game is kind of a mix between Animal Crossing, My Time at Sandrock, and Wind Waker. And I do have a video giving an overview of my experience, so feel free to take a look at that if you're interested and you'd like to know more. But basically, you're on this island that's abandoned, and slowly more and more characters will move in and you will repair houses and shops in order to make the island thrive again. You will be diving through shipwrecks in order to collect materials, and with a little boat, you will get to explore a ton of different islands. What I like the most about this game is the character creation. You've got so much freedom, and you can play as not only a human, but also a ton of different animals or even a robot, and I spent so much time creating my character. You also get to pick which of the houses you want to move in, which is a nice touch, and overall, I really enjoyed how much freedom this game gave me. Of course, it's still a beta, so the game isn't complete, and I will say the controls felt quite clunky, especially underwater or when jumping. The music was also very repetitive, and I had to turn it off at one point because it was getting a little bit annoying, but I quite enjoyed my time with Critter Cove, and I'm going to be looking forward to its full release on Steam whenever that happens. Still, on September 26, we got the very anticipated release of Mineko's Night Market for the Nintendo Switch and Steam, and it will also come out for PS4, PS5, and Xbox One on October 26th. I played this game for 2.5 hours, so it is the game that I played the least, but keep in mind I'm recording this on the 28th, so I've only had it for 2 days, and we still have a bunch of games to talk about. In this game, you play as Mineko, a girl who moves to an island with her dad, but when they arrive, they realize it doesn't look like the ad and the town doesn't seem very active. Every Saturday night, there is a night market, which used to be a very popular attraction, and your goal is going to be to craft things to sell at the market and make it popular again. As you do that, there's also a bunch of agents in suits that are capturing cats on the island. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you'll have to figure out what's happening. The dialogues are without a doubt what I like the most about this game. Every single line of text is quirky and filled with humor, and I don't think you can possibly play this game without smiling. You will get attached to the funny characters and the story, but the gameplay is also fun. It's a bit basic at first. You will mostly collect flowers and craft bouquets to sell at the market, but later on you will unlock other activities like fishing, along with other crafting stations. The night market also has a minigame that is different every week. So the first week there was this cat race where you have to ride a cat, and the second week there was a play where you have to pick the correct lines. But once again, the dialogues were just so fun, and I say this as someone who usually doesn't care too much about dialogues. In this game, you really don't want to skip them. I don't have anything too much negative to say about this game. I'm still pretty early and I'm having a good time. But if there's one thing, maybe the different missions with the agents are a bit too easy or simple. And keep in mind, it's mostly a narrative-driven game more than a gameplay-driven one. So if you're looking for a challenge or complex gameplay mechanics, this won't be for you. But if you just want to relax with a funny story, then go for it. We're not done quite yet with September 26, as this is also the date when Paleo Pines released on all platforms. This is a farming game where you befriend dinosaurs, and I played it for about 20 hours. And most of the time in this game will be spent on finding dinosaurs, gaining their trust, and taking care of them. If you like the wrenching aspect of farming games, you will love this one. Every dino is different. Some are carnivores, some are herbivores, some like to be within a herd, others like to be by themselves, some like valleys, others like forests. And so with all of these different needs, you will have to make the proper pens to make sure all of your dinosaurs are happy. Once their happiness is high enough, dinosaurs will start helping you, and you'll be able to ride them to get places faster, but also to break rocks, gain access to new areas, till the soil to get ready for farming, water the crops, and so on. This game is so cute. I think it looks and runs a little bit better on Steam than on Switch, but it's also not a perfect game. Exploring the world sometimes feels a bit restrictive because it's a fairly big world, but you can't jump and there are a lot of places you can't go. For example, there could be a small hill and you would have to walk all the way around to go down, or you cannot walk through a river or things like that. The controls are also a bit clunky, especially when you need to do precise movements for farming. And I feel like I've been saying that a lot of games today have been clunky, but this one is probably the worst on that aspect. Other than that though, I'm really enjoying this game. Just keep in mind that taking care of the dinosaurs is the main thing, so you won't find other activities like fishing. Cooking is also pretty minimal. Farming is very simple. You can't go inside your house and decorate it, but you can decorate a little bit outside. But if you want a ranching game with dinosaurs, that's the one. The last game that came out on September 26 was Harvest Moon: The Winds of Anthos. It's on all platforms, but for Europe it will release on October 6th. I played it for about 8 hours, and this is the newest entry in the Harvest Moon series of games from Natsume, which started in 2014 with Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley. Their last game was Harvest Moon: One World, and Winds of Anthos is definitely an improvement from that one. I feel like I still need to play more to have a proper opinion on this game, and that's mostly because it takes so long for the game to open up and get started. The tutorial itself takes about an hour and a half, and after that you need to find silver to repair the barn. It also took me some time to figure that out, but after about 5 hours in, I felt like I could finally start playing. This game is open world. There are 5 different towns and you can move your house from one place to the other, growing different crop mutations in different places. I personally always have a hard time with open world farming games, or games that make you manage multiple farms at once. That was one thing I found overwhelming in Sunhaven with the 3 towns, and to an extent even Fae Farm, but in Fae Farm you can manage to do almost everything using just one farm. But overall, I do tend to prefer farming games where I just stay in one place. That's just my personal preference. The Winds of Anthos is not that. It makes you move around all the time, so just keep that in mind. I'm also finding the world to be a bit empty. On top of that, you lose stamina when you run, so traveling is a bit tedious. Later on, you do unlock fast travel, so you no longer lose stamina all the time, but then you also don't get to explore the world as much, which I feel like defeats the purpose of having an open world. So there are lots of things that I'm not a fan of, but as I said earlier, it is an improvement over One World. The character models look good. I love the over-the-top facial expressions. There's a camera and you can take selfies with a few different poses and expressions. I'm having a lot of fun with that, and there's also a great variety of animals that you can tame. Not only do you have the usual things like cows and sheep and chicken, but you also get wolves, jaguars, bears, and the animal models all look so cute. The UI also looks very neat. There's a tracker on the map, very useful, that allows you to find specific items, and overall, just a bunch of little features like that. But there's also a bunch of things that I feel like don't make a lot of sense or work too well. So for this one, I feel like I'll definitely have to play more and do a proper review in the future. But for now, I will say, if you liked Harvest Moon: One World, you will most certainly love this one. If you didn't like One World, there's a chance this game could change your mind on the Harvest Moon series, but I would recommend you watch a few more reviews or wait maybe for a sale. Before I go over the last game that I played this month, I want to give a shout out to Wildmender, which released on September 28th for Steam. I played the demo for this one a few months ago, and it's a game where you're in the desert, and your goal is to grow some plants and bring life back to a little oasis. If you played games like Journey, it kind of feels similar to that, at least visually, because there's a lot of walking in the desert, but this game has more to offer. There's also crafting, there are some survival elements, so you need to make sure you have enough food and water. You also have to be careful not to stay for too long under the sun or you'll get too hot. And from what I remember playing the demo, it was a bit challenging, but it does get easier once you have enough resources and food. You can play with up to 4 players in co-op. I played it with a few of you guys, and I'm looking forward to doing that again, hopefully sometime next month. But if you're curious about Wildmender, definitely check it out, it's a lot of fun. Okay, last game for today, Silent Hope. This one is kind of a bonus because it comes out on October 3rd, but I had the chance to play it. Exceed gave me a key for the Switch version. It's also gonna release on Steam, and I'm about 15 to 20 hours in. This game is an action RPG, it's not at all a farming game, but the reason why it's making its way on my channel is because it supposedly takes place in the same universe as Rune Factory. The first monsters you'll fight are woolies. You will also encounter the cows and chickens from Story of Seasons, but honestly that's pretty much it for the connection. I was really hoping for more Easter eggs or references to Rune Factory and Story of Seasons, but everything else is completely brand new. Anyway, in this game you play as 7 different heroes, each with their own skills and weapons, and you go into the Abyss, which is like this big procedurally generated dungeon. Every few floors there's a checkpoint, and your goal is to make it to the bottom of the Abyss. It gets more and more difficult, and it can actually be a bit challenging, even though the combat mechanics are pretty simple. What I like is that the game encourages you to play with all of the different characters. So for example, on certain floors you will find these crystals, and you can switch to a different character, and that will give you a buff for the rest of the run. So if you change your character every time you see a crystal, you will have a ton of buffs, and you'll be a lot stronger once you get to the boss. But of course, in order for that to work, you will need to grind and level up all of your characters, which makes this game a bit grindy and repetitive, which can be either a good or a bad thing depending on your preference. Between each run, you'll go back to the base camp where you can craft weapons and prepare food. The crafting is very bare bone. For example, in the Abyss, you'll find, let's say, silver ores and carrot seeds. Then you'll go to the base camp, you'll have characters that will transform the silver ores into ingots and the seeds into carrots. But as the player, you don't actually do any farming or minigame for the crafting, you just have to give them the items and wait. Once your materials are processed, you can then make some weapons and food. I wish they had made the crafting a bit more fun. Also, whenever you're in the crafting menus, there's a princess who's the narrator in this game, and she keeps saying random stuff. She's a bit annoying, but besides that, I do really enjoy the gameplay loop. Grinding and leveling up the characters to get a bit better every time is very satisfying, it's fun, and overall it's a pretty simple action RPG. I am working on a full review for Silent Hope, so I'm not gonna say everything today, but this game comes out on October 3rd. And these are all of the games that I played in September. I hope this was somewhat helpful in helping you decide what to play next. If you'd like a more in-depth review of a specific game, please let me know in the comments. I won't be able to do all of them, of course, but I'll do what I can. Also, let me know what you have played this month. Leave a like and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you all in the next video.